Kevin is the owner of Center Collision in Tacoma at 1111 Center Street. We are a collision shop that is able to repair and paint cars after being in an accident and make it look like it never happened. We work with all insurance companies that are not contracted for to work with them. We have been in business for 21 years, with 9 of them being at this location. I'm going back and forth between the first and third person here. So Kevin began his business by working out of his garage at his house as a hobby. Kevin has been married to Debbie for 18 years, and they have 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls, ranging from 15 to 34, and 8 grandchildren. Kevin loves the outdoors, and when he's not working, you can find him snowmobiling, skiing, boating, camping, quadding at the sand dunes, motorcycle riding, or playing games with friends. Kevin is also very involved in his church and volunteers as a Boy Scout leader. A new addition to the family is a pair of 50cc scooters for Kevin and Debbie to cruise around town on. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin.
On that note, I've never experienced this before, but I've heard of it happening. So last night I got home and I remembered I had to run a movie back to the Red Box. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hop on my scooter. So I hop on my scooter, cruising down Stewart, and I see a truck down there. You know, he stopped at the stop sign, and I figured, yeah, he's gonna wait till I go by before he pulls out. Oh no. He pulls right out. I mean, if I was a car, I would have hit him. I mean, it was that obvious. And I'm thinking, where's my horn? There it is. Beep, you know. And anyway, yeah, it was really intimidating for him. But you know, I've heard about it happening. About, you know, motorcyclists say, yeah, people don't see it. And I know as a driver, I've experienced. I've cut people up like, oh man, didn't mean to do that. But I mean, I'm right there, and he's here. He looks and pulls out in front of me anyways. Like, so yeah, crazy. So I want to talk today about paint booths, okay? Like those magical paint booths, you know. I've heard about them, and you know, when I was getting in the industry, I had some misconceptions myself, and I know a lot of people have misconceptions about what is a paint booth, and I had this vision of, well, if it was painted in a paint booth, the paint's going to turn out beautiful, you're not going to get any runs, and it's going to just turn out perfect. Well, a paint booth is really just like a tool you have in your toolbox, and it's really as good as the person using the tool. So if I was to go in my paint booth right now and paint a car, I'd get dirt in the paint, I'd get runs, the color wouldn't match. So the paint booth doesn't solve any of those problems. It really is the person that's operating the paint booth and how he does with it. So I kind of want to start with just a little bit of history of paint booths, because, well, they haven't been around, you know, forever. There was a certain point there was a need for them. So even before that, before the paint booths were around, there was a need for spraying stuff, because well, see you, man. That's okay. Hey, thanks for coming Saturday, by the way. That was fun. Yeah. So before, you know, we were spraying, how did you put paint on? The brush. So the old cars that were built a long time ago, they actually brushed them. So at a certain point, you know, spraying became an option, and actually I'm going to read about that a little bit. Just a little bit of the history of it here. So in 1887, maintenance supervisor Joseph Binks, the Binks, you ever heard that name before? B-I-N-K-S? Yeah. If you ever been around the painting industry, there's Binks spray guns, there's all kinds of Binks paint booths. It's a pretty well-known name. So Joseph Binks, so when I read this, I, you know, lit up right away, invented a cold water paint spraying machine to apply whitewash to the sub-basement walls of his employer, Chicago's Marshall Field and Company department store. The next year, Civil War veteran Dr. Alan DeVilbiss, anybody ever heard that name, DeVilbiss? goes right hand in hand with Binks. Same thing, paint booths, spray equipment. So, and before I read this, I didn't know how far back they went, but these guys are like the initial inventors, and their products are still on the market today. So Dr. Alan de Vilbis invented the atomizer for medical use. So that was in the late 1800s, okay? So the spray gun developed from these concepts as early as 1907. It was a timely idea since Henry Ford introduced his Model T the next year, and mass production was just starting to evolve. The spray painting of paint was first used in, who can tell me what industry? So the spraying of paint was first used in what industry? So I'm going to give you a hint. It wasn't the automotive industry. Wasn't house painting.
Boats.
Nope, wasn't boats.
Aircraft. Airplane industry.
Nope.
Body painting. Chairs.
Oh, furniture, yeah. So, you know, my instincts are, well, yeah, they made the spray gun and everything for cars, but in actuality, it was developed, you know, it was started in the late 1800s, it was developed in the early 1900s, and it was initially first used in furniture. So then, you know, of course, Henry Ford saw, hey, this is pretty cool. I think we need to use this on cars, and it dramatically changed how quickly they could get a car painted. So anyways, things have definitely evolved from how cars were made and how they were produced and how they were painted, from brushing now to spraying. And then at a certain point, a spray booth became necessary, okay? I think it was, I was looking for a date on that and I couldn't really find one, but I'm thinking it was probably around the 70s or so, because I looked at some pictures way back when, and I was looking for one with the guy spraying something without a mask, because I know they're out there, because way back in the day, you know, it wasn't a requirement. Things have drastically changed on that too. So, but at some point, I'm thinking it was probably around the 70s or so. Paint booths became probably an option instead of just painting inside just any old room or garage. And then later on, it became a necessity, and nowadays they're mandatory, and they've dramatically changed. So I brought some pictures. I want to just talk about the different types of paint booths. So this one here, this is like an extremely common type of paint booth. Okay. It looks, yeah, it does look like a tool shed. And so the thing about it is, anybody know what a paint booth is made out of?
Metal. Plastic.
It's out of metal. Yeah. Well, I take that back. Most of them are made out of metal, galvanized steel. And in reality, it's almost just like you can buy them as a kit, and it's almost like a pre-manufactured home or something like that, or like if you got to put together if you ever put a barbecue grill together, you know, they got all these pieces and it takes forever. It's kind of like that. They come in just already with all the pieces all cut out and everything, and basically it's a matter of just putting it together. So as you can see, I just want to explain the basic filtration system. Let's see, now this one is set up similar to the one I have. Okay, the green back here, those are the exhaust filters, and these ones up front here are the intake filters on this particular model. So I'm just going to explain the different types of paint booths that they have. This is a really common one, and this is one that's been around for quite a long time. Not necessarily the best, but it's been around. And ours is really similar to this right now. Here, actually, I'm going to pass them around if you guys want to look at them. This one here is almost identical to the one we have right now, okay? The filters are in the ceiling, okay? So like if this room here was like a paint booth, all the air would come in from right above you, okay? And it's filtered by pretty thick filters, and the filters actually have a sticky substance on them. The filters look similar to this, but this is an exhaust filter. So this actually, you might think, well, that looks like a house filter. Well, it's the same type of thing. So the intake filter, which is you see here on the ceiling. The dimensions are probably the same, but they're a lot thicker and almost like a felt. And I didn't want to bring one because if you touch them, it's almost like you got sap on your hands. They're sticky. So, but you get the idea of it. So I'll pass that around.
Kevin, are the VOCs regulated, or do they just go up into the atmosphere? Volatile organic compounds?
Yeah, that's just a matter of, there's a manometer on the, I'll get to that in a few minutes here. There's a control device that shows how well the pressure is, if it's being compromised, because there's like a, so much air has to be sucked in and also go out, and if the filters are not clean, then it won't allow it to do it properly. But anyways, so the green filters on top are the sticky ones, and the air comes in there, and the ones on, this is, like I said, exactly like what we have right now. That filter here would be the one that looks like yellow right now, so I'm going to pass that around. So, and that is called a cross-flow paint booth. Okay, so you heard of the terms good, better, and best. Cross-flow is pretty good. Okay, it's been around a long time. It works. So we'll get to different versions here. And now this one here is obviously there's a whole bunch of different manufacturers of paint booths now. So they have different versions of the same type. So that cross-flow that I just talked about. This is similar, let's see. But the exhaust filters on this one are just in a big square on the very end of the booth. So in that case, the air comes from the top, and then it basically, if you were to see it, if the air had color or like arrows on it, the air would come from the ceiling, it would go straight across, and it would all go to that big box at the end of the room there. So that's a cross-flow. Now this one here, this is called a downdraft. Okay, so now we're going from good to better, and the downdraft is considered one of the best ones. But this particular version of the downdraft has what they call a basement on it. You can see that. I'm going to pass that around. So the way it's set up is that a downdraft basically takes the air from up top and it goes all the way to the bottom. Okay, so the first one I showed you, if you ask a painter in a dirty booth, he's going to say, yeah, the cross flow takes the dirt and drags it across your car, which it will. If you got a dirty paint booth, and that's the way it's set up because the air is kind of going across the room. Okay, in a downdraft, it pretty much goes from the top to the bottom. And you know the way gravity works, so you know it's naturally going to go to the bottom anyways. So in the downdraft, it's kind of an ideal situation because it's not stirring up a bunch of dirt and everything in your paint booth, and it's considered the cleanest type of paint booth to have to get the best results. And in reality, the purpose of a paint booth is to kind of like Rick was talking about, contain the volatile substances that you're spraying, keep them in a confined area. That's why, for the most part, the paint booths are made out of steel, so they're be like a fireproof type of room, and it has a controlled environment. So most of them you're going to buy are going to have heat. Not all of them. It costs more with heat, but if you're in a cold climate and you don't have a stable climate, I don't know, maybe in California you get away with it, but around here there's no chance. In wintertime you can't spray without heat. So heat's good, which keeps the room at a certain temperature, whatever you set it at, so that when you go to spray a car, you're going to get the same results every time. Because if the temperature change like 10, 20 degrees, you're going to have a dramatic difference on what you can expect that paint to do. So
is that typically 80 degrees for every deal, 70 or?
It's about mid 70s. So and this is another example of the basement model of a downdraft paint booth. It's just a little more of a dramatic example, so you can kind of see. Now the whole idea behind the basement is that, like I said, the air comes from the top to the bottom, and I'm going to get to the full downdraft here in a second. But in that particular case, you drive up on the ramps, and so the paint booth is not only the walls around you, but the top, but the paint booth is also underneath you. So it's designed that there's filtration that goes into the floor, which is about a foot high, and then it's dispersed to the sides. So if you had I'll give you a good example. The guy that I bought my paint booth from, he wanted to put it in the building that he was renting, and the owner said you can't put it in there because a full downdraft paint booth, you have to cut the floor, and you have to allow because you drive the car in on the concrete, and you have to have the air go down underneath it and get recirculated. That's how you get around it. That you saw that picture, that basement model, and what they do is they build ramps, so you drive up, and instead of cutting into the concrete, you just drive up on the ramp, so you're up a foot higher, and it allows you to ventilate it by not cutting into the floor. So that's a good part about it. Bad part about the basement model is, well, what if the car isn't running? You got to push it uphill now, because if you're a foot up, and then every time you got to put a car in the paint booth if it's not running. Also, some of these sports cars really sit low to the ground, so if you try to ramp them up, you could run into issues there. So the version that we just purchased and we're getting ready to install is this is a Nova Verta brand, which there's Binks, DeVilbiss, a couple I just mentioned. They're still around. Nova Verta is actually made in Washington. It's a high-end paint booth. They're double wall. They have a really good reputation. So this is the one we bought. This is a full downdraft, which means the air starts at the top and it goes to the bottom. It doesn't drag it across. But being the full downdraft, the grates you see on the floor, you have to cut concrete out of the floor to put those in. So it's a bit of a project to cut it out, dig it out, and then it's almost like an escape tunnel. It's like, think if you were in the paint booth, like we're in this room here, and you want to get outside, and the only way you could do it would be dig underground. Well, that's kind of what you got to do, because the air has got to go down through the floor, and then it also gets recirculated through the heat, the million BTU heater, and it gets thrown back in the paint booth. So, yeah.
Is this in addition to the ones you have, or is it replacing?
It's going to be replacing. Yeah, so we'll take the one. Well, we only have one. Just.
It's the one kind of out back then?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, and the one, like I said, we have a show to do. That's a cross draft, and it's been around a long time. It works. It fulfills all the requirements to paint vehicles, but this is going to allow us to have a much more controlled environment. Only other thing I didn't tell you is we don't have a bake system on. We have heat right now, like we have heat inside here, but a bake system, when you take a million BTUs and you kick it into a room smaller than this, it's going to get pretty hot. So the heater that we have with the new paint booth allows us to get it to about 150 degrees. So we have the capability of painting a car in the morning, putting it together that afternoon, and delivering it the same day. So right now what we do is we paint them, let the primer sit overnight, and then the next day we'll paint it, and then once it's painted, sits overnight, then we assemble the next day. So it can dramatically change our production.
3 days.
Yeah, it could actually go from 1 to 3 days, from 3 days to 1. So we're talking about, there are now at the same time, you got to heat those things, to get it 150 degrees and heat it for 45 minutes to an hour. It's going to cost you a few dollars, so you have to weigh all that out. But the thing is, you could load it up with, like, say, if you're going to paint 4 or 5 bumpers, and then put them all in the bake process at the same time. So you don't have to paint one part, then bake it, then paint another part. So you got to be efficient about it, but gives you the option of getting things done a lot quicker. So paint booths have really evolved. So this is a paint booth, and I just started to see these recently. They're like a blow-up paint booth. I mean, if you notice on the side, I think those are sandbags, so they don't like blow away or something.
Looks like a camping tent.
So those, I believe, are used for like when you do repairs out on location, because I mean we're at a brick and mortar building, and our paint booth isn't going anywhere. It's bolted to the ground, and we bring the cars to our location to fix them. But in a case like that, you could, you know, it's almost like one of those kids' toys that you blow it up and bam, you know, bouncy house. Same type of thing. So those things are set up now where you can bring them on location. Maybe you went to like a big car lot and you could do a bunch of their touch-up work, which a lot of the times right now, you see these same day, I don't know if you do, but I do. I see guys go to location and it says same day auto repair, and they're painting outside, and it's probably not completely legal, and at some point they're going to get completely cut off because they're just spraying right out in the atmosphere. So there's no filtration or anything like that. So this is probably going to solve that issue at some point. Do you have a question?
Is the purpose of the air being blown to dry the vehicle, or is it to clean out the pollutants that are in the air?
In the paint booth?
Yeah.
Okay. A couple reasons. To dry it, yes, especially with waterborne paint, which we're not using now. We have used it in the past, but we went back to solvent. It's not a requirement in the state of Washington right now, so guys are kind of, it's kind of hit and miss. Some use it, some don't. But if you were using waterborne paint, you want a lot of air movement. They actually have fans you put in. You get additional fans, but any type of air movement is going to help that waterborne paint dry quicker, and that's the biggest obstacle with the waterborne is with the solvent you got, well, it's like thinner or alcohol or gas. If you put it outside, it's gonna evaporate pretty quick, whereas water might take a little bit longer. It'll evaporate. So same thing, but if you got air movement on it. So the purpose of the fans is number one to dry the paint, to keep the air movement. Then the other thing is overspray. So if you ever sprayed something and then you got a big cloud, then your paint sort of dries, whatever you painted. Then this cloud kind of settles on it. It could cause it to feel kind of rough and not smooth again. So what it does is it takes that overspray and gets it out of the room right away. So the way you spray it is the way it's going to look. And what was the other thing? Well, part of the heating process is when you kick the heater on and when you're doing that, the air is going to help dry the cured paint. I mean, well, I was talking initially about like the base coats and drying the base coats, but even after you put the clear on, that room's going to still kind of circulate the air. But usually, if you put a fan on something, you think, yeah, it's gonna blow some stuff on it. But that's the whole purpose of having this environment. It's almost like a utopia. You have like a room where you're not allowing anything to happen in the room that you don't want it to. You don't want any dirt or dust. You want the temperature to be just right, and of course, get the bad things out of there.
Is there a procedure where people like go in there first with their uniforms and kind of like shake themselves off in front of the air thing and like deject themselves?
I don't know how he does it.
Yeah.
I know he uses, he wears a paint suit, and I brought a respirator so you can see this is what he uses to. So we actually use respirators.
Let the record show.
So Rick, you asked about what's called. So there's a manometer, which is a gauge that goes on the paint booth. And so if you turn the paint booth on, what it's going to do is you're going to hear all these fans kick on. It's going to go bzzz, and so the air is basically drawing air from the outside, and it's going through the room. The way I have it set with the crossroll we have right now, goes through the room, then it goes up through the exhaust pipe. So if the filters aren't changed on a regular basis, it's going to throw that manometer off. So it's something we have to actually check every day. We have to note where it's at. And on average, about every 2 weeks, we change filters.
The filter is just one like that.
No, there's about 25 of them.
Does it have activated charcoal in it, or is it just like that?
That's exactly what we use.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Okay. Anything else? Okay.